So far, inside our application, we defined dark theme related classes at different places. For example, inside the index.html, against this body, I'm trying to apply normal background and dark background with a prefix of dark. We expected the body of our application is going to have this dark background when we toggle the theme, but that is not happening. Similarly, inside the header.jsx, here also, if you search for dark colon, at few places, we are trying to use these dark theme related classes. For example, when the dark theme is activated, I want the border light to be applied for the button that I have developed. Similarly, during the dark theme, when someone is trying to hover on my button, I want this background gray color to be appear. But if I try to test the same, nothing is happening. The body background is not changing and the border also is not changing and hover background is also not changing. Because right now, when we try to change the theme from light to dark and vice versa, we are not giving any clue to the tailwind about the theme change. That's why nothing is happening. To make the changes to let our tailwind CSS know about the theme change, first we need to understand some concepts. For the body, as you can see, I have created two different classes, bg-normal bg. If I try to hover on this is how the CSS vanilla is going to look like. There will be a CSS class name with the .bg-normal bg, which is going to have the logic of using this background color. But if I try to hover on the dark theme related class, this is how it is going to look like. As you can see here, it is having a parent CSS class name which is .dark. Behind the scenes, this is how our tailwind CSS classes, they are going to be converted into plain CSS. As you can see, for the first CSS, it is a normal CSS class which is .bg-normal bg. But coming to the dark mode related background class, we have this parent which is dark. I hope you are clear with this plain CSS setup that is going to happen behind the scenes. Once you get this clarity, now let's try to understand how these classes can be leveraged to toggle between these two classes. In the light mode, we want the first class to be applied, whereas in the dark mode, we want the second class to be applied. So in a normal HTML file, if I try to use this entire code, as you can see, body has class bg-normal bg, and similarly, we also have other CSS. But in this scenario, only the bg-normal-bg class will be applied, but not the bg-dark bg. In order to apply this bg-dark bg, the parent of this body, which is HTML, should have a class with the name dark. That's why the second class will be completely ignored. Whereas if you try to add a CSS class to the HTML tag saying that class is equal to dark, in this kind of scenario, the second CSS class that we have is going to be applied because the parent has dark CSS class and the child, which is the body, is having the bg-dark bg. With that, this background color is going to work. But here you may have a question which is, even when we try to mention this class as dark for the HTML, still inside normal CSS, this bg-normal bg is going to be applied because this is a simple CSS class and it does not have any parent class. So it is going to be applied as long as you are trying to use against an element. The same rule here also apply. Even though when we mention the class as dark, both these bg-normal bg and bg-dark bg will be activated in this scenario for this body. But the bg-dark bg, it is going to get the highest priority. Here also I have mentioned a note saying that the CSS selector .bg-dark bg has higher specificity than .bg-normal bg because it has an additional parent selector which is .dark. So when two conflicting styles exist, the more specific selector wins. That's why when we try to mention the class as dark, though these two classes they are going to be applied, but the bg-dark bg, it is going to get the high specificity, and with that, whatever styling related to the background color that we have defined under the normal bg class will be ignored by the browser, and this background color will be applied due to the higher specificity to this class. From this whole discussion, if you try to take one important point, that will be adding this class as dark. Adding this class as dark to the HTML is the actual hero behind the scenes, which is switching the CSS between the normal CSS styles and the dark CSS styles. That's why when we are trying to toggle the theme with the help of this button inside the toggle function, we need to remove this class to the HTML or we need to add the class to the HTML based upon the theme that we are trying to implement. Let's try to understand how to do the same. I'll go to the header.jsx. Inside this component, we have defined a toggle function where we are trying to set the theme by invoking the setTheme function. As of now, to this setTheme, we are trying to pass a simple arrow function which is going to return either dark or light based upon the existing theme value. I want to write more logic inside the body of this arrow function. That's why I'm going to mention curly braces instead of these brackets. I'm going to introduce a new constant with a variable name as new theme. The output from this ternary operator I'm going to assign to the new theme. So if the new theme value is dark, I want to add the class dark to the HTML element. Otherwise, I want to make sure this class dark is not present against the HTML element. How to do that? It's very easy. We need to first invoke the document, which is going to give us the access to the actual DOM object inside the browser. Using this document, I'm going to invoke document element. This document element represents the HTML element inside our application. Using this document element, I'm going to invoke class list followed by .add. To this add function, I'm going to pass the class name dark when the new theme value is dark. Otherwise, I'll try to remove the dark class from the document element. Let me copy the same code inside the else, followed by this time instead of add, I need to invoke the remove function. Once this logic is executed, we need to make sure we are returning the new theme value as an input to the setTheme function. That's why at the end, I'm going to write return new theme. With this, I'm assuming our code should work. Let me save this and go to the browser. I'm going to refresh my page so that we're going to have the default value, which is light. If I click on this, nothing is happening. Let's see what error I have inside the console. I'm getting an error saying that new theme is not defined. Let me check what is the problem. I am a fool. I written all this logic outside of the toggle function. Let me move this entire code into this arrow function that I have inside the toggle theme function. Once I moved, I'm getting some error. Let me mention an parenthesis here to solve the problem, followed by I'm going to remove these parentheses that I have here. So with this, now we should be good. Let me go to the browser. Let me refresh this page. There are no issues. I'm going to click on this and boom, the background of the body is changed based upon the background color that we have defined. Similarly, if you see, the border of this icon is changed, and if I try to hover on this as well, the hovering background color also changed. That means whatever dark theme related classes that we set up so far, they are working. This gives a confidence to us to go ahead and apply the dark theme related classes inside each component. That is what we'll try to continue from the next lecture.